I mean, sadly, life itself was his battleground every day. But man, what a warrior, I mean, 'cause he had some bad days and things, but he never really cried a lot. It took a lot to make him cry. He was mostly, happy and a little nutter.
Welcome, everybody. I just feel so blessed to be here today. Number one, July is Bereaved Parents Month. So it's a month that just really is focused on parents who have suffered through the most unimaginable thing possible, is the death of their child. And today I'm here with Zane Shook, who is a dad who has been grieving for several years now. And so I'm just so thankful. I met Shane actually through a Facebook group, and we just started kind of connecting and doing some messaging back and forth, and he shared some of his beautiful poetry and things like that. So I just thought this was just really something that would be very important for all of you who hop on and listen to me and are on my various social media platforms. So Zane, welcome so much. Why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Well, as you said, my name is Zane.
Zane, yeah.
That's all right. I've been called worse. And yeah, I'm 47 now. Been married for 26 years to my queen, Julie. We've been together forever, through thick and thin. It's been a kind of a interesting life, I guess. I'm learning through other people and myself. I guess when I was born, I had tubes and things and running through my body. My dad said he couldn't even see me the first time that he came home. He was in the armed forces, and I had so many tubes and things in there, and I guess I almost died twice. And then a lot of tragic things have happened, in childhood. None of my family died, thankfully, but, I witnessed my brother be engulfed in flames. My sister get hit by a car right in front of me when her, back in the day when they had back brakes, on the bicycles, and her chain popped off. I reached out and tried to grab her, but she went right out in front of this car. Some crazy things like that. And, a lot of times our life, we just take it as it comes, and you don't realize that things are traumatic, especially when you're a kid, it's just, well, that was crazy. And then you kind of move on. And it wasn't until later on in life that I kind of had nightmares about those, since, we're talking about traumas and things. But, life went on. 3 days before my 16th birthday, I was shot by my best friend since kindergarten with a sawed-off 20-gauge shotgun at point-blank range. Yeah, it blew out my whole everything here. So that was quite the experience. Changed a lot of things in life, I had planned on going in the military and things like my dad, but, they said, well, you got the heart and the mind for it, but the body, if something could happen, to the shoulder. And then what I used to do for a profession, I did carpet cleaning, fire and water restoration, things like that. And then actually, when I met Julie, it's kind of funny. I walked into this new country bar. We actually met at a bar where people say, oh, that can't happen. And I walked in my Metallica shirt, because I was always about Metallica, and it was a huge country dance floor, it was a huge country bar. And I was like, look at these weirdos, and then, now it's like, here I've got, and I learned to dance, line dance, and do all these things, 20-step, 2-step waltz and all that. And I was like, you know, we were throwing down out there on that thing. And I was kind of doing this modeling type stuff for a store that was in there called the All American Cowboy. And that's where I met Julie. And the first time I noticed her, I'm not sure if she noticed me or not. I was actually dancing with someone else, and my hand kind of slipped a little bit, and I almost went right into the dance rail because she caught my attention. I was like, "What's going on?" Bam, you know. And I was like, "Oh Jesus!" I hope no one saw that. A lot of people did see that though, you know. And then, yeah, she walked up to me though one day, and she just said, "When are you going to dance with me?" And I was like, "Right now." And we've been dancing ever since, you know, live, you know, like the song, you know, The Dance by Garth Brooks. A lot of people think that's actually just about a specific dance, but it's actually about the dance of life, you know.
Mm.
So it kind of has a double meaning there. But, and then we had Wyatt, and he was born in 1998. Now, at 7 months along, they had brought us back in after the latest ultrasound and had told us that they could not see one of his kidneys at all. It was just not there. You know, it was a void. And then the next one, or the other one, they could not see it. They did not know if it was there. So legally, they had to give us the option to abort if we wanted to, because they said, you know, if he's born with no kidneys, there's just absolutely no chance. But of course, you know, my mentality and hers is we're thinking, you can't tell us that 100%. So we're not going to throw in the towel before the bell rings. You know, we're going to give life a chance. And he came out. And then, you know, the doctors really got a kick out of it when he peed on him because they're like, he's got a kidney, you know. You know, and he did his thing, you know, nature's business, and then he was born, you know. And Wyatt, his name is Wyatt Zane, and technically my middle name is Zane. My first name is actually Warren, so it's Warren Zane Shook, WZS, and he's Wyatt Zane Shook, WZS. But Wyatt means small courageous fighter and courageous in battle. And I mean, sadly, you know, life itself was his battleground every day. But man, what a warrior, you know. I mean, you know, 'cause I mean, he had some bad days and things, but he never really cried a lot. It took a lot to make him cry. He was mostly, you know, happy and a little nutter, you know. He was kind of a little crazy guy, even though he could never speak.
Okay.
You know, he couldn't speak, and depending on exactly what we would be talking about, he passed when he was just 4 months shy of his 18th birthday, but he's probably mentally functioning somewhere around between 2 to 4-ish. You know, maybe a little. It's really hard to pinpoint it down. I know he had special needs. You know, a lot of people, you know, if they don't know about special needs, they just kind of assume that you're just kind of stationary. But he was actually ambulatory. He could walk. He could go crazy. But he'd just get really tired a lot. That's why you see in a lot of my pictures that, you know, the wheelchair, because we had to have that after he outgrew the strollers and things like that. But yeah, so he only had the one kidney. He had many surgeries. He had to have an ASD and a VSD repaired for his heart, and that was one of the biggest one. And then he had to have what they call a fundoplication. It's where at the bottom of your esophagus tube, if the muscles are relaxed too much, that's what gives you the GERD, you know, the really bad reflux. And his was really bad. And so they had to go in there and wrap it, tighten it, and then it came loose. They had to revise it, and so he fed through a Mickey button in his stomach. You know, it's kind of like a feeding tube, basically. The Mickey buttons are really nice though, because you can take the actual tubes off. And then he had the trach placed for many years. So, you know, there's a lot of suctioning, and then of course there was medications. He did suffer seizures. So he had a lot going on.
You had so much. I mean, I'm a nurse by background, and just, all of the physical challenges that you dealt with. So basically, for 18 years, this was your life, right? This was absolutely your life, is caring for this beautiful child,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And, oh, did you want to ask something?
No, go ahead.
Uh, yeah. And, some people say, oh, wow, that's crazy. You had to sacrifice so much. And it's just like, I didn't sacrifice anything. I was gifted, I was blessed. Not me gifted, but, gifted with him and his presence. And so after he was first born, we were both home with him for many months. And then, I would work for a while or she would work for a while. And then we got some nursing here and there. And kind of went back and forth like that for a few years. And we lived in Carbondale, Kansas at that time, but we had to make so many trips, about 80 miles east of here to Kansas City. And that's where Children's Mercy Hospital is, down in Kansas City, Missouri, And so we moved to Olathe, Kansas, which is just a little bit south of Kansas City, to be closer to the hospital. Because there were many times, I mean, we had like his diaper bag was basically a diaper / go bag. You had to be ready at any second. I look at it a lot like preparing for an imminent tornado all the time. Mm-hmm. And when a lot of people, they use that expression, you see it now on it's funny to watch all these things change, because here I am still kind of a caveman and I'm still using the same terminology from, I missed out on a lot of that stuff because, I was raising him and I wouldn't have said half of it anyway. Hey, I'm with you 24/7, 100. And I'm like, whatever that means. Okay. But right. Some people say that and it's like, I got your back, 24/7, but I'm going to go take a 12-hour nap. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not what that means. When you raise a special needs child like that, you're on 24/7. And it wasn't until probably he passed in 2016. It was probably about 2014 when a lot of things started happening to me health-wise, where things started catching up. And I think a lot of it too was probably from the past traumas of, getting shot, things like that. I had to actually be put on adrenal support twice because, with his suctioning and things, and when his seizures got bad or he got sick, you just sometimes didn't sleep for a week at a time. I mean, right. That's just how it was, Or even if you did, I could hear a fly a half a mile away, you could just hear everything. You're in tune with that because he could need suction in the middle of the night. You have to hear that because he's doing it, he's aspirating that. That's going into his lungs. You could drown from that. That has right. to come out right then and there, or it could have a seizure, things like that. So there were many, mad dashes at times to either call an ambulance or at times take him to the hospital, and you had to be prepared to be dressed, with everything ready to go, him ready to go,
Well, and what I'm hearing from you too is, for 18 years of your life, you were on high alert. You were like continuously, when people talk about PTSD and post-traumatic stress, it's that constant barrage of, being on high alert and the fear that goes down and ready to be able to take you got to be able to move quickly on your feet. You have to always be in tune to that. And you talked about the adrenal support. And interestingly enough, I also work in Chinese medicine with Qigong, and the adrenals, the kidneys, and all of that. In ancient Chinese wisdom from thousands and thousands of years ago, fear is the emotion that affects our kidney system. So you think about that. You are in a constant heightened level of fear that something's going to happen and you have to be prepared. So there was always that, being of high alert in like a constant fear phase. So it's not, for me, it's totally reasonable that you ended up needed adrenal support because your body, was in this high alert, and this fear was affecting your kidney energy for years and years and years. So let's talk a little bit about, so 18 years, you spent 18 years caring for this beautiful child who gifted you. I mean, you've shared pictures, you share poems, on Facebook. You are so beautifully able to express in both the photos and in your writings about this beautiful love between father and child that, that's what really hit me when I first met you. It was just like, wow, you are just so beautifully able to express that. Did you know, were you prepared that he was going to pass at a young age? So, I mean, is that something that you were just kind of always in the back of your mind, that this could be my last day, this could be our last time together? I mean, did he live what he was expected to live? Did he live less than what he was expected, or longer? What happened there?
Well, I think ultimately, from their standpoint, I mean, and just medically, he lived a lot longer. And they tried to say that was because of, the great care that we took of him. But I'm like, I was just being dad, Wyatt did a lot of the hard work, you know what I mean? And it's like we talked about earlier, that constant being stuck in that fight or flight mode, just an overdrive. And it wasn't so much a fear of, not like how people think, like terrified, walking on eggshell, you know what I mean? But your system feels it, like you were saying, your system, even though consciously you're not paying attention to it, because you can't feed that wolf, you know what I mean?
Right.
That'll just tear you down. But, and to answer your other question, we never thought about it like that, that he was going to pass or anything, because there's just no way we were going to let that happen. I actually saved him twice before. So that was what was another thing that was so traumatic about this third time, that I couldn't bring him back. But yeah, we just embraced life, and, he just, well, like children do, it made you so happy and things. And it's just to see the things that he could go through and still be happy and wander around, and you know what I mean? And the things that we would do together. He probably spent a third of his life on our chest, just sitting up with us and patting him and things like that. He loved to go for walks, go to the zoo, things like that. But there was never, we never really took on a defeatist type attitude, because that could, as soon as that happens, that could spiral real quick.
Right.
And, because he actually, I was giving him a bath one day, and I literally just stepped out around the corner to grab his syringe, and I heard the water, and I thought, oh, he's standing up. And I looked back in the room as I was walking back in there, and I couldn't see him. At that split second, he had a seizure, and he went underwater. So it's just like, you got to multitask at this point. You can't, it's kind of like I tell people, the worst time to panic is when you're having a panic attack,
Yeah.
You got to rein that in, man, quick. You got to learn how to just do that. And so I grabbed him out of the tub and put 911 on speaker. And then as I started suctioning him, thankfully, that's a good thing, though, that he had the trach, too. I suctioned him there and actually had to suction down through his nose and things like that. And by the time the EMTs got there, they could see how much fluid that had come out of his lungs. And within 10 minutes of them after they were there, he was pretty much like, get off me, man, I want to play, That was his attitude. And they thought, wow, this is insane, And then that's when people, they kind of say things to you that I guess seem rational on the outside looking in, but, and they say, oh, that was heroic, and things like that. And no, that's dad, man. That's just, his mom would have done the same thing as she'd been here. That's just what you do. There's no limit to what parents will do,
I would imagine, though, if we could ask Wyatt today, were you his hero? Was his mom his hero? He would say absolutely yes. You may not see it that way because that is unconditional love. You know, you are the epitome of unconditional love and love for a parent and a child. And so you may say, you know, that's just what a parent does. But I know that if the tables were turned and I was sitting here interviewing Wyatt right now, he'd be saying, yeah, my dad, he is my hero. He is my hero. As much as I was his hero, he's my hero.
I'd like to hear
So,
that interview.
yeah, I believe that that's what he would be saying. Absolutely. So Zane, so you know, you guys, you were so on high alert. You weren't thinking that anything would happen. Then all of a sudden, you know, that third time, he wasn't able to come back. And then you stepped onto this very tumultuous, absolutely soul-crushing grief journey that parents who have a child who has passed step on. So can you talk to me a little bit about what's the last 4 years been like for you? You know, we know that when you first are in grief, you're just in like zombie mode, right? Totally can't think, can't do any of that. But you started stepping forward in a way, but what were some of the things that you did to help you in being able to take 1 foot at a time to move forward in a life without a physical Wyatt with you, knowing that his spirit is always here?
Right. Well, and you know, and just before, you know, before he had passed too, for that last year, he was actually, his one kidney was actually going into failure. So that ultimately was one of the causes. And then he got a really bad infection on top of that. But even though we knew that, yeah, it still came, like you said, out of the blue. Really, we weren't expecting that at all. No one is. Um, but yeah, like you said, after that, um, you know, and people say it feels like a dream, but you know, dreams are they're hard to recall. You know, you get them in bits and pieces. Nightmares you can vividly remember over and over and over. So this is more like a nightmare than it is a dream of any kind. Um, but yeah, you're in such a dark place, and even actually, you know, the trauma of it. Like I say, comparing it, say, to the bodily trauma I have with a shotgun. I mean, that'll put some hurt on you, you know, a shotgun wound, and it'll mess with your whole system. But I can tell you that that is nothing compared to the physical trauma of losing a child. And I mean, you know, because it decimates your entire body, your soul, your spirit, you know, everything that you are. It literally physically hurts. And I can tell you, it hurts a lot more than getting shot or having a kidney stone or any of that nonsense. That's all pretty easy. But, you know, I was in such a dark place. And for the last 4 years or 8 years of his life, I was the one that was stay at home with him. And so, you know, Julie had taken a little extra time off of work, of course, and then she went back to work and has been doing that ever since. And I'm still a stay-at-home person now, trying to get my health back together. But I think one of the things that, and you still go back, you know, it's like I still have obviously very, very hard days where you just can't even move, you know, and it's paralyzing. But, you know, my health was just so bad, and she got us these 2 German Shepherds, and there was a day out here that, you know, they wanted to play, and I was just such a mess and crying, and I thought, you know, back to right before Wyatt was born, and we said, you know, we're not going to throw in the towel before the bell rings. And so it was kind of like, that's what I've done, actually. And I felt like, you know, I never really let him down in life, but I was letting him down in spirit, you know, in passing. Because at that moment, you know, that's the day that I was actually sitting there with a bottle of sleeping pills in one hand and a bottle of painkillers pills in the other. And I thought, screw this world, I'm out of here, But, and then I just thought of him, and that's, well, like I wrote, epiphany came calling, and it's like, you just, this can't happen, this isn't, um, this isn't the way that life is supposed to be, and nor is it supposed to be that we're, supposed to grieve our children. We're not. But for me, the thing that helped me was to try to just carry on his legacy, for him, and talk about him. And I actually started, when I started writing, there's probably some of the things I haven't shared yet, but I actually kind of started writing to him instead of about him, kind of started writing to him things, and that, because you're always talking to your child when they're not, when they're not here, things like that. But actually writing it down, it's really therapeutic. It's not easy. But that was one of the things that started to give me a little bit of hope. And then, I was walking outside that day too, and I saw this little bird sitting there, and I just started watching it, and I thought, oh, I think it's really beautiful, and you start noticing all these things. And it was a few days later, this butterfly landed on my hands, and it just felt like, and I think a lot of people, you after something tragic, you want to see signs and things like that. But at the same time, I never had anything happen like that before, and all of a sudden that came here, and it was just like, that butterfly, it's light as a butterfly, but it kind of hit me like an anvil, and it was like, you need to wake up. And then, so I started writing more, doing things like that. And I did, it's kind of like what you were saying earlier about the unconditional love. I just, I think that's just what you do. People ask me sometimes about my writing, and I don't know. I mean, it's just, that's just how I express myself. I thought everybody did it like that, you just lay it out there, you have to be brutally honest and open. But I'm finding out that's not the case. And because I commented one time, there was a question that was in a group of dads, and I really joined some of the dad groups. I never joined them until after he had passed. But I just wanted a place to kind of share it. I am to oh, hello.
Sorry, someone. I apologize, Faith. I don't have you on the. She accidentally. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It's a party line.
Yeah,
okay.
Apparently, yeah, accidentally. So, okay, so you went to this group of dads, and
and this one was called Life of Dad, and they had put a question out there on their Facebook wall, I guess you call it, and it just said, what is one thing you wish you could quit doing as a dad? And there was a lot of just pretty much typical answers. Oh, stop doing this, do more of this. And mine was more about quit sabotaging myself, and the self-annihilation with the guilt, getting over the guilt of not being able to save him, because the guilt is the thing that just, it's the like the dagger to the heart.
Yep.
I mean, it's the ultimate, and that's, I don't care if you want to talk about a 10,000 pound boulder. Grief is heavier. Grief is the heaviest thing that we can carry ever, and it got quite a few comments and things, and I just kind of didn't think about it much longer. But then they contacted me about 4 months later, and they said that one comment just blew up the whole team there at that Life of Dad, and so they asked me if I wanted to do one of their a mini documentary for their Real Dad series. And I thought, well, yeah, I can do that to honor him. That was the first time I'd ever put my ugly face on a computer. But it was really hard. I mean, you know, but at the same time, it was something that I had to do, you know. I mean, just like, you know, I wrote his obituary and everything and read his eulogy and wrote that too. I wasn't about to let anybody else do that. That's my job. You know, that's,
Yeah.
and it wasn't easy, but, you know, the most
Well, it's
beautiful things
interesting.
often aren't, you know.
Yeah, and in listening to you, as you know, I've written a book, and it is to help grieving parents, kind of different tools and things that they can do as they're walking this grief path. And grieving is a form of healing. We have to go through that grief when we experience a deep loss, because that's part of the healing process. If we don't, I coined the phrase, it can be failed grief. You know, it's kind of like having a surgery. You know, you might have a surgery, and if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, you can have a failed surgery, right? And then go on and actually maybe be worse off than what you were before, or definitely not being able to regain your health. And healing in grief is that same thing. It's a healing place, but we need to be able to take certain actions. And so what I'm hearing from you is a lot that I know. Number one, I don't know a grieving parent who did not say that they were ready to die. And I don't take it as it's suicidal ideation. It is, the fact is, you don't want to live without your
Right.
child. So that's totally normal. What you just said, you know, having each of the pills in each hand, it's like, but then you make a choice and say, you know, this isn't what Wyatt would want. I mean, I need to honor his life. And that's what I've found is like the main thing to help in the healing process is remembering to honor. When you honor your child, you're honoring your own grief, which is important. It's important to be able to honor where you're at. And the fact that you're writing, you know, other people may not write and do other things, but you're writing. I really encourage the people that I work with in my grief coaching that they do write letters to their children, to their loved one, not about them, but to them, because that is that way to keep that connection and to keep their spirit alive. In my circumstance, it was my brother who died before I was born. My parents never talked about him. They, you know, back at that time, you just buried it, right? And you didn't say anything. Yeah. And so 60 years later is when my mom finally was able to talk about it. And we talked about Greg, and we brought his spirit alive. We had his name. We brought out the couple of pictures she had, because she had buried it, but it stayed within her. It always was within her. You know that. I mean, this, like you said, this crushing boulders of pain. There's no pain that is the pain of having a child die before you do. That's just not the natural order of life. So you spoke so eloquently about, this is the facts. I mean, this is, you know, this is absolutely the facts. Now I'd like to ask you, so between you and Julie, what were some of the differences that you saw in how you kind of have been walking your grief path, and for Julie as a woman? Because I see that there's a lot of differences between guys and gals a lot of times, because guys are doers and may not talk as much about their grief in the way that a woman might. So what are some of the differences that you even notice in your own marriage as far as, you know, processing with this grief?
Or the roles are reversed.
Okay.
You know, she really doesn't talk about it that much. Well, and neither one of us, you know, we really don't sit down and have conversations about it. We talk about Wyatt and things like that, but we're pretty much on the same level as far as where we're at grieving. I mean, we both still just have monstrously horrible days. And, you know, lately I've been having even kind of going backwards as far as that, you know, and that's, you know, that's just going to happen. But well, and I had mentioned to her, you know, like I said, when she went back to work, and I thought, I don't know how you can go back to work. You know, that takes strength to me. And she's like, I don't know how you can sit here in this apartment, because we were still in that apartment at that time, you know, And
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things that, like you said about doers, is a lot of people tend to do is just whatever they either do for a career, for a hobby or whatever, they just busy up their time and just get their hands working, you know.
Mhm.
Um, you know, like they say, the idle hands are the devil's work, you know, and um, part of my issues on top of everything else was I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroid disease, which is an autoimmune disorder, and psoriatic arthritis. Um, and then on top of that, they found out I had mercury, cobalt, and uranium in my system,
Mm.
which they're not sure what. And you know, you can look up any of the side effects from those. So there were literally many days, and then on top of that, the depression that came with it. I probably sat on the couch literally every single day for 2 years. I think the longest I went without shaving or even taking a shower or changing my clothes at all was 3 months. And I was pretty much awake that whole time too. Um, they diagnosed me with some kind of crazy sleep disorder. Um, and quite literally, I would be awake for, you know, up to a month or two at a time, sometimes longer. And the sleep doctor said it was probably most likely due to just the accumulated traumas.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a challenge in itself because uh, a lot of life is mental, it's not physical, you know.
Right.
um, and so I let the lessons of Wyatt, I call it Wyatt's way. He just always has a way of making people happy, making people smile, things like that. And there's times when, like I said, you can feel your whole system crashing. And so for me, I just and it's easy to say, oh, try to remember the good days, but it's oftentimes like I wrote in that last post I just put up, that adrift, that um, a few memories, they're so horrible, they're at the end, they can overshadow everything else. You
Mhm.
just don't want to let it wash it away, which is kind of where it can get to, and that's what you're pinpointed on, you're focused on. um, and that was another thing is, I was just such poor health that, I'm sitting here on the sofa. She's working every day. And then she's the one that's out in the yard doing the mowing and things like that. Well, she doesn't mind. She loves to do it. So she is more of the like busier, do it up kind of thing. And I'm starting to finally get some part of that back because I'm kind of only running at like probably 20% really, to be honest with you, compared to what I used to be. And a lot of that is, there's no doubt that his passing just accelerated all of those health issues,
Right.
and then I ignored him for so long too, because I thought, well, if I couldn't save him, why should I take this medicine to help me, kind of punishing me. But then you wake up to the fact, it's like, I'm not just punishing me, I'm punishing Julie, Wyatt's memory, you know, and that's just something that you just can't have that, that's the one thing that I think every parent wants to do, is to have their child's memory honored, to just have someone say, you existed, you mattered, and so many people feel alone because nobody wants to talk about, like you said, child grief, nobody. But I've known people that have lost children in the past. And so I see it from both ways. I thought, well, what can I possibly even, I'm not going to walk up to them and say, how are you doing? They might kick me in the face because,
Right.
how do you think they're doing? This is something that, like you said, this is a lifelong battle. I mean, it just will be forever. This is completely different than any other type of grief on the planet. Um,
Absolutely. It's when you talk about like for 2 years, and that's what I want people to understand is there is no timetable. There's no cookie cutter process of how you're going to move in your grief. And I'm not going to say move through it because the grief is always there, but it's going to have, sometimes it's at a crescendo. It's so high and so heavy, and then other times it comes down and it settles down a little bit, but it doesn't go away because grief is love. I mean, had we never loved, we would not grieve, right? So that's an immense love, and trying to, you have all this love in your heart, and where do you give it, you know, when the physical person is not here? But what I really want to let everybody know is, don't beat yourself up if it's taking time. And people may say things like, come on, you know, it's time to get moving, or, you know, it's been too long, you need to do this or that. But knowing what it is for yourself, every individual, just like you and Julie, you each grieve differently. Now she's the one that's the doer, she keeps busy. And that's what I've noticed in this whole COVID environment too, is people who are so used to being busy and not be in their heads all the time, thinking about their loved one. And then all of a sudden they had to be home and they couldn't get out, and they, you know, couldn't. And then all of a sudden that it's like, I'm in my head way too much, you know?
Wow.
So I appreciate that you're being so open and sharing about this. And the honoring your child is so important. And I see that you're starting to take a few more steps. You were just on a podcast, I believe, or on a radio show or something like that. You're sharing your story more. And what I know about grief is that truly where the deep healing comes from is when we start sharing with others and find a purpose on being able to help others. And I see that with you, Zane, you know, with your writing, with your sharing, your deep wisdom. You have a depth of wisdom and a way to express it so that everybody gets it, you know, and it doesn't make anybody bad or wrong. And the other thing that you talked about early on too is, what I know is that there's two emotions that really are important to work through. Well, actually three, I'm going to say three. Emotions that I think are really important to work through, as far as how do you frame it in your mind. Guilt. I don't know one mother or father who doesn't carry a tremendous amount of guilt, because we're here to take care of our children. And even though there's may have been nothing that you could do, most likely nothing you could do, that weighs so heavily. Another one is anger. You know, a lot of people experience anger, and I almost feel like guilt is kind of anger turned inwards. It's like we're angry at ourselves with our guilt. And then the other one is abandonment, you know? So, and I believe that all of our past, so you had so many traumatic events as a child. And like you said, we just kind of move on. We think everything's fine. But when we are stricken with this deep of grief, all of the traumas that we had in the past, all our beliefs, everything kind of comes to this table of grief. And then it can be just like a mountain crushing you. And to try to sift through that takes time. And you're sifting through your writing, you know, you're sifting by getting the medical attention that you need and working on your own health, which is so important. So I just really appreciate that. Now, if there is one piece of advice, piece of wisdom that you may be able to give, especially other dads, but any grieving parents, what would that be?
I don't know. I mean, I think to me that's like the hardest question, because there's no magic answer. There's no magic bullet. I mean, the only thing that I could say is, you know, you've already been through the worst that could possibly happen, and you're still here. You're still here for a reason. And it's tragic because, you know, you not only have guilt of not being able to save our children, but you feel guilty because I'm still breathing and they're not. But you almost have to create like a mission statement in your head. And mine was, you know, basically plant a flag with Wyatt's name on it and let the world know that, you know, he was a beacon of hope. He always was when he lived, and he still lives, you know, through the words. The only way that our ancestors or our children truly die is if we stop speaking about them or writing about them. you know.
Mm-hmm.
They live on through us, through our words, through our stories. And I've had people message me and say, hey, I was just thinking about you and our family. We were talking about Wyatt, you know. It's like even my grandpa feels like part of the family. And that's the part that finally kind of felt like I got kicked in the head with some reality. It was like, oh wow, that's amazing, you know. And that's what you want. Um, and like I said, I just called out Wyatt's way, and you know, he said, well, it's because of the way you write about him. And I'm like, no, he's the one that gives me strength. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's the one that puts the wisdom in there. It just kind of flows through my pen. That's just how it is. But yeah, that's really all I can say about that, at least at this point, because you know, some questions you don't want to answer because you almost feel like a hypocrite because I'm not always able to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah, I mean, that's the darkest thing that we could possibly go through, and we're still here. So now that's the question: is what do we do? You know, how do you move forward uh, when all you want to do is lay down and die? You know,
Yep.
and that's what you feel a lot. And that's how I try to look at things and what gets me to do that. And then, like you said, the one thing that I have as far as advice is tell people the same thing you did, is to just write, start writing. Because a lot of people would say, and especially men, and well, even a lot of the women would say, I wish I could express myself the way you do. And in my head, like I said, in my head, what I was thinking is, well, you can, it's easy, just start writing, you know. You know, even think of a word like, say for why it would be warrior, and then just start going with that. Or like you said, write. What I did, the same as what you're talking about, write to him first. You know, I just wanted to communicate with him, you know. It's kind of like a message in a bottle. You throw it in the sea. You don't know if anybody's ever going to get it. That's not really the point. The point is that expression of it, you know, because even the unspoken words and the, you know, oh, I never got a chance to do this or that, all those things that go through your head. Well, you have a chance now. You have nothing but time now to do that, you know, and
That's
to put that out
beautiful.
there. Otherwise, that builds up too, and that's what really tears you down, like I said, and it builds into rage, and we have to deal with that, or it will eat us from the inside out, you know.
I so love your honesty and authenticity, Zane. Always have. I mean, I think that's what just, you know, kind of connected me when I would see things that you posted on Facebook. And I have one piece of advice that I give people, and it's a pretty simple one. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Just be kind. Our children want us to be. It is a very, very hard one. So this is the other thing is I did write this book last year. It came out last year. And if anybody here wants a copy of the book, all you have to do is just, I'm going to put my website. It's www.healingfamilygrief.com. Reach out to me. Tell me that you want the book. I will send it for free. Zane, if you can private message me your physical address, I'll send you a copy of the paperback copy here. You know, because I think this was written because I've had so many grieving parents share their wisdom with me. And I found there are commonalities that you do as grieving parents who are able to step forward and may take steps back. And it's a roller coaster, even 10 years down the road, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 60 years, like my mom, right? This is not something that just goes away, but the people who are able to successfully continue to live and honor their children and to serve others in their healing process. I took all that wisdom and then I just put it together in a book. I'm the one that you all are my wisdom keepers. I'm the scribe. I took it all, I put it in a book so that we can give steps for people who are just, you know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to get out of bed. Like you said, 2 years, or you went 3 months without shaving and changing clothes because you're awake, but you're really not. you know,
Right.
mentally. And we know that, again, I'm a nurse. I also work with energy healing with the Qigong, but we know that the emotional stuff that we're going through affects our body. And you talked about the psoriatic arthritis and the immune, you know, all of that kind of thing. That all is affected because of energy in your lungs, and it's energy. So what happens when we're grieving, that's the emotion. It settles in our lungs, and it can create blockages when it's been there for a long time. And so energy blockages, so our skin, psoriasis, our immune
Yeah.
system, all of that is in our breathing energy system. So you're just absolutely I don't want to say a poster child, but you are kind of the poster child of this is what happens.
I messed
And
up.
and because of the emotions, so when you can start moving into bringing in some positive emotions, and for grieving, the positive emotion of deep grief and that where we can open up our lung energy systems, our breathing energy systems, is the emotion of contentment. So being okay where I'm at today. I am content with where I'm at today. And some days you may not, some minutes you may not, but the more that we tell ourselves, and through your writing, that is bringing forth that contentment within you. You are able to get content when you're writing because you're expressing yourself. And I appreciate that wisdom of, even if people, if you're listening to us and you don't like to write, I love it. Take one word, and put that on a sticky note around your house, and just remember, and all of our phones now have voice recorders.
Right.
Record into the recorder and just talk to your beloved child, your beloved spouse, whoever it is that you're grieving, and just talk to them. Because again, it's that connection. And you talked about the butterfly, you talked about the bird, but then the butterfly that landed. Now, I believe that energy transforms. Wyatt isn't gone, his energy has transformed. So what a beautiful gesture to have a butterfly, a true symbol of transformation, to land on you and help you to awaken, you know, that spiritual beingness that you express so beautifully. So I'm so appreciative of you, Zane. I always have been. If you don't mind, if I can take if you can send me the one piece of work that you would like me to share. You've written a lot, but if there's one particular one, why don't you send it to me? And then I will put that in with the post that we send out to everybody, so that people can really get a taste of your beautiful expression of love for Wyatt.
Okay.
And it's very powerful. And is there anything else that you would, just in our final minute here, that you would like to share, or you know, point people to, whatever?
Um, well, you know, like we always look to outside sources for inspiration. And like I say, you know, you've already been through the darkest moment. And just like the thing that I had to realize is that people are watching, you know, and they pay attention to things. So whoever you are, you're probably inspiring someone else too. And there's nothing more powerful than service to others. To the smallest gesture could go a long way, you know. So um, you know, just take a deep breath, and there's still plenty of work for us to do, for those of us like us here, you know. And um, I shared a memory today of a poem called Sleep Living, and it actually has, ironically, that picture of the butterfly from a few years ago on it. And what you said earlier about sifting through everything, I actually did write a poem called Sifting Me. I might send you that too.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. So, are you good with people connecting with you? What's like through Facebook or,
Yeah, yeah, Facebook, Zane Shook. Um, I'm on Twitter too. I don't really understand all that. You know, I think I have an Instagram account with like 3 pictures on it. Uh, I don't do a lot of it, but I think I'm going to try to figure out Instagram a little more just because I do have the pictures. And I've taken some of Wyatt's pictures and some of the shorter writings I've kind of put on them. I guess, I don't know if that's called a meme or whatever, but, and kind of done some of that. So, yeah, and I think I'll figure out how to link that on my Facebook page. I don't even know what my username is. I think it's just my name on Instagram. I told you, I'm a tech caveman.
Well, I think for anybody, I mean, I'm a tech cave girl, I guess, I'm learning because it's part of my business, but see if you can find Zane on Instagram. Zane, when you figure out what your name is, your username or whatever, send it to me. I'll put it out and I'll make sure that I'm getting that out to people too. This will go out on Facebook. I will be tagging Zane in on this, and so then you'll have Zane so that you can reach out to him and friend him with that. And I just am so appreciative of you taking the time here. Oh, your puppies are ready to go do their thing. I can tell. They're like, you've been in there way too long. It's time to get us out in the yard and play. So, but I am so, yeah, I'm so appreciative. Well, hopefully this video is good. I think there was one little spot where we may have lost a connection, but that's okay. I believe that this is the world of what gets out there gets out there. We do the best that we can. That's part of that grieving process. You just do the best that you can. 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time, whatever that is. So many blessings to you.
The moment was just a stutter step,
Yeah. And much love to Julie.
Thank you.
And private message me your address. I'll get a book off into the mail too.
Okay.
And I look forward to continuing our connection because we are on Facebook. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Zane. You are a very precious person. Hi there. Thank you for stopping by our Healing Family Grief channel, where grief can transform into peace, purpose, and even joy. That is the intention. So as host of the Healing Family Grief channel, my goal is to provide insight, inspiration, and hope for people who are grieving a deep loss, or for the people who want to provide support for those who are struggling on their grief journey. If you like what you hear, please like us, give us a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel to hear more. Also, feel free to share any episodes that you feel could be helpful to someone you know. For more information about the Confident Grief Coach School, or to find a grief coach, or perhaps to order one of my free ebooks, please check out our website at www.healingfamilygrief.com.